Enlightenment is man's emergence from his self imposed immaturity. Immaturity is the inability to use one's own understanding without guidance from another. It was the duty of philosophy to destroy the illusions which had their origin in misconceptions. Whatever darling hopes and valued expectations may be ruined by its explanations. Immanuel Kant. Do not be afraid of spending quality time by yourself. Find meaning or don't find meaning, but steal some time and give it freely and exclusively to your own self. Opt for privacy and solitude. That doesn't make you antisocial or cause you to reject the rest of the world, but you need to breathe and you need to be. Albert Camus. Those few quotes helped open my eyes to the beauty of philosophy. In this episode, we begin our journey into the world of knowledge. Throughout this podcast, we will explore the depths of who we are as individuals, who we are as human beings, and the world around us. Join me as I talk about my love for philosophy and how it has helped change me for the better. This is False Perception with your host, Lefty Philosophy. I used to think philosophy was useless, that it had no real world value, or it didn't affect my day-to-day decisions, but that is so far from the truth. We use philosophy every day. The problem with philosophy is that one does not have to be conscious of the fact that they are using it. So it becomes this invisible way we navigate through the world. It underlines every action, thought, and belief we take or hold. It's probably one of the most used disciplines outside of language. In our modern society, philosophy has been unfairly characterized as the sect of useless theories made up by ivory tower elites. But so much of philosophy is the exact opposite. Diogenes was a Greek philosopher that made a virtue of poverty. He believed that virtue was better revealed through action more than anything else. He used his simple lifestyle and behavior to criticize the social values and institutions of what he saw as a corrupt, confused society. He declared himself a citizen of the world rather than claiming allegiance to one place. He begged for a living and often slept in a large ceramic jar. He also helped create one of the most influential schools of thought, Cynicism, that eventually turned into Stoicism. Cynicism is a thought that the purpose of life is to live in virtue, in agreement with nature. As reasoning creatures, people can gain happiness by rigorous training and by living in a way which is natural for themselves, rejecting all conventional desires for wealth, power, and fame, and even flouting conventions openly and derisively in public. Instead, they were to lead a simple life free from all possessions. Does that not sound like someone you personally know? Someone who would rather live in the middle of the woods in a cabin? Someone that wears a simple black t-shirt and blue jeans every day regardless of how much wealth they have? For some, it's hard to understand why someone would choose a life outside of the conventional paths laid out by society. Why would anyone want to live in an RV down by the river when they could live in a bustling city and everything you could want is only a short walk away? Philosophy helps understand why. It helps us understand why people believe the things that they do. Philosophy is the cornerstone to truly understanding others and ourselves. But why is that important? Sure, you can go through the world and never need to truly understand any of the things you believe. I would call that living in ignorance. However, I don't blame people for wanting to live that way. Philosophy takes work. It takes asking yourself hard questions that may lead to uncomfortable thoughts. And when we live in a world of instant gratification and where many of us must work long hours to be able to just pay our rent, at the end of the day, if you can survive without needing to know why you believe the things you do, then why waste your time doing so? Why not just binge watch the newest season of House of Dragons or play Call of Duty with your friends? Why not just mindlessly scroll through social media feeds while lying in bed at 11 o'clock at night? This goes back to my original comment about how society has mischaracterized philosophy. The way our society is centered around the economic theory of capitalism, obtaining knowledge for the sake of knowledge isn't a top priority. Why waste your time on something that wasn't going to make you profit? Why waste your time away from the grueling rat race on figuring out who you are as a person? That requires work, and at the end of the day, many people don't want to work when they have just left their place of work. Not only that, the daily tasks of living in a dwelling do not mysteriously disappear. Cleaning, cooking, laundry, kids, pets, and external relationships all require time and energy. So, when one comes home from their place of employment, they are sort of employed again, except this time they don't make money. They are just doing their daily tasks that must be done to avoid long-term consequences. One doesn't have to clean their home, but if they don't, it'll eventually lead to long-term problems. Things like health-related issues, mental and physical, bugs and pests, and increased repair and maintenance costs. After accomplishing one's daily responsibilities, there isn't much time left for the individual. When does one take care of themselves? When does one invest in their own mental and physical wellness? Even then, our society still places investing in our own knowledge on the back burner. One must go to the gym. One must invest in one's physical health to better deal with the daily stress of life, to find a partner and to remain physically well. One must exercise one's body so that it can remain in tip-top shape to continue work, eat, sleep, repeat for the rest of one's life or retirement. It seems the physical body has a higher order of importance in our society. Without it, one cannot do the massive amount of continuous labor needed to keep our economy moving. It is only until recently that our society has tried to emphasize our mental health as just as important. With the uptick in mass shootings, the COVID pandemic coming to an end, mental health has been a hot button topic. It's come up in the healthcare debate, and more importantly, how we balance our work and personal life. A part of mental health is exercising your brain and keeping it actively engaged. Things like reading, creating, and thinking. Skills you learn to develop in other disciplines society frowns upon, like liberal arts. This is where I believe philosophy comes into play. It challenges one to think about why they believe the things that they do, not on a superficial level, like because our parents believe the same thing, or we heard it from a trusted source of information. But why do we believe in the things we do? Philosophy digs deep into each of our personal axioms or concepts that we just take as self-evidently true. It makes us question why that is the case. Why do we believe this? These questions can do one of two things: lead us to change our beliefs or further solidify them, both of which allows us to better understand ourselves and our positions, which leads us to a better understanding of our world and those around us, which could improve our relationships to both of those things and lead us to a better mental health outcome overall. Philosophy, in its basic sense, is just love of wisdom. It is a practice people undertake when they seek to understand fundamental truths about themselves, the world in which they live, and their relationships to the world and to each other. The great thing about philosophy is how broad it is. There is at least one area of philosophy that everyone can find and enjoy, from metaphysics, the study of the nature of reality, of what exists in the world, what it is like, and how it is ordered, to epistemology, or what we can know about the world and how we can know, all the way down to ethics, what we ought to do and what would be best to do. Philosophy, I believe, has started every great achievement that humankind has produced. If it wasn't for people years ago who laid back and looked at the stars and asked, what is up there? Newton looking at apples falling from trees, or Charles Darwin studying finches, where would we be? Albeit that many of those achievements were produced in the realm of science, but the initial quest for knowledge came from a philosophical point of view. To ask, why does the apple always fall to the ground? Why do these birds look different from these birds? Science has always been able to tell us the answer to these questions, but philosophy helped drive that initial discovery. Philosophy helps develop the things we cannot yet prove empirically, because if it could be, then it belongs in the realm of science. Things like ethics and morality, where there isn't an equation that can prove what is good or bad. In order for something to be good or bad, a value must be given to it based upon some overlying objective. If not, then it becomes neutral or void of anything that could be called good or bad. Take, for example, murder. Murder is bad because it deals with the unlawful killing of a human being. To break a law is generally bad if you want to live in an ordered society where one just cannot kill another without due process. The thing that makes it bad is that it's against the law. Killing another person isn't the action that is bad. One may kill another person as long as it's in self-defense or the reasonable defense of another. The act of killing isn't good or bad by itself, but it depends on the circumstance that the action finds itself in. These type of situations, not being so black and white, are what kindles the passion I have for philosophy. I see thought experiments all the time in my daily life now. I see them in all forms of media and literary works. One of the most notable is the trolley problem, a theoretical situation where one is the conductor of a trolley on a track. The track has a fork in the road just ahead. On one side, there's just one person tied to the track. But on the other side, there is more than one person tied to the track. Let's just say 4. One must choose to either go left or right. Whichever way one chooses, all will die on the track. Which way would you choose? Now, let's say there's a mother, and her child has the cure for a terrible disease that will kill millions. However, the harvesting of the child's blood will kill the child. Does a mother choose to save millions or her own child? This is a more complex trolley car problem. On one hand, we have the love of a mother and a child, a close bond of kinship. On the other hand, you have millions of people dying from a horrible disease that could be stopped. The people tied to the track are now humanized. They are no longer just one life versus 4 lives. It's one's own child versus millions of strangers. Does one choose personal happiness by saving their child, or do they choose personal happiness from utilitarianism, an action that benefits the greater good over anything else? These are all deep questions that reveal a lot about one's underlying beliefs, about whom they are. These thought experiments are meant to open one's mind to the complexities of our world, to expand one's ability to think and process information in different ways. They help flesh out deeply held beliefs that may be central to one's entire sense of their self. They're not meant to be trivial or even silly, no matter how ridiculous some may sound. They serve a purpose to philosophy. They are a medium to help explain ideas, like how language helps transmit ideas, how pieces of artwork convey art, and how myths and stories help keep traditions from dying. Thought experiments transmit philosophical ideas in ways that can be enlightening. Do not think philosophy will somehow be able to objectively determine what is right or wrong, but think of it as a means to understand why others may believe what is right or wrong. Being able to understand the thought process of someone who believes differently than you helps humanize both sides. It keeps the other from being otherized or simply vilified. Philosophy has helped me move beyond calling those I don't agree with bad or evil to understanding that evil doesn't actually exist and that we as individuals are far more complex than just one idea. Sure, being homophobic is not a great behavior to many, but understanding the underlying axioms of their belief structure helps one not only refute many of their points, but also makes one better at communicating their ideas and beliefs. Philosophy is a tool. It's a way to peel back the lenses that we all have that filter information and try to understand that information before our own bias kicks in. It keeps us humble in our own ideas. By understanding that we may be wrong in believing that the world isn't as static as we would like it to be, we set ourselves up for success. As we develop and practice our philosophies, we are better able to deal with change and move on from it. We are better able to communicate how we feel, what we think, and everything in between. Philosophy opens our minds to things we may have never thought of and forces us to look in the mirror, to see the person standing in the reflection and who they really are. I hope that through this podcast, I can bring my love of philosophy and spark at least one new thought in every person that listens, one new perspective to see life through. Even if I never change any minds, I just want my children to understand and know who I was. I have changed and grown a lot since my journey into philosophy began. I look at my past self and just cringe at who I used to be. I look toward my future self and I'm excited to morph into that person. But I do not forget my present self, with all the flaws I carry. Philosophy is how I seek knowledge. It's how I come to know the world in a deeper and more meaningful context. It's how I soak in all the beauty of the world. The world is my canvas, and philosophy is my palette. I want to thank you all for listening. My next episode will focus on the most fundamental concept to philosophy. Who are you? I also make content on TikTok and YouTube video essays as Lefty Philosophy. Please join me there for a more curtailed experience in politics and philosophy. As always, have a wonderful day and stay safe, my friends.